Well, this is a meeting of the Joint Audit Committee of the New York City Municipal Water Finance Authority and the New York City Water Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
Max von Hollick.
Present.
Basil Segos.
Robert Elburn for Commissioner Segos.
Alfonso Carney Jr.
I'm here.
Mark Shaw.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. First order of business, as usual, is a resolution asking for a resolution to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was on June 14th of this year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank
Could I
you.
just make a small change that I only attended it once, not twice?
Mark's name is listed twice, and I can remove that.
So a draft of those minutes are in your package, and we'll make that correction on it. If anyone has any other comments or questions about the minutes, I'd ask for any objections. Hearing none, resolution is passed. Next order of business is our primary purpose today, and that's the presentation by management and the independent auditors of the financial statements of the system for the current fiscal year and the comparative fiscal year relating to it. At this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Bob Balducci, the comptroller of the authority, and ask him to present that and introduce the representatives from Marks Paneth, who are the auditors who are here.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to go through the summarize the financial results of the year. I'm going to ask everyone to refer to the presentation. We'll use this presentation actually for both for myself and Warren will go through his discussion. So if he can turn to tab 4, page 19, which is the income statement. Okay, so the water sewer operating revenues for fiscal year 19, the collections was $3.7 billion. That was an increase of about $165 million compared to the previous fiscal year, and that's primarily due to the rate increase of 2.36%. Our non-operating revenues increased by $64 million compared to 2018, and this is really due to our unrealized and realized investment income. Going down to expenses, the operation and maintenance expenses was $1.5 billion. That's an increase of $80 million from the previous year, and that was due to an increase in wastewater operating costs. So I'm going to move along to, before I move along to the balance sheet, you can see towards the bottom the results of our revenues and expenses. We had a positive net income of $255.7 million. Now, if we could go to the balance sheet, which is on page 15 and page 16, starting at page 15. The authority issued $2.1 billion in bonds. 1.1 billion of that was for refundings. And then the authority transferred of what we issued during the year. The authority transferred $1.9 billion to the city for construction costs. And that's pretty much it that I have really on what we did during the year. Those are the results. You can see very large numbers. We received the revenues. We pay our operating costs, we pay the debt service, we issue bonds, and we pay the capital costs. We can go to page 29 because we had some GASB implementations, and I wanted to talk through those. So GASB has issued several pronouncements during the year. 2 of them which really affect us was GASB 88, certain disclosures related to debt, and GASB 89. With GASB 88, we had to discuss and we had to disclose information regarding any pledged assets towards our debt. We had to disclose any type of finance-related consequences from termination events, subsequent, termination events, and acceleration clauses. These are all new disclosures that we were required to do. And then we had to separately display information about direct borrowings. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, because we're going to go over to GASB, to Note 9. We also implemented GASB 89, which was interest costs incurred before end of construction. Really didn't have an effect on us, because we really have never accrued or accounted for interest costs for during construction. So if we can go to page 37, which is Note 9. How we do it. So we actually took the opportunity of looking at our long-term note, because this is really the main focus of the authority. We issue debt, and we issue a large amount of debt during the year, and we service that debt. And we took the opportunity to actually reorganize and rewrite 9, not just to include the information that was required by GASB 88, but to be a little bit more descriptive of what we do, during the year with debt. You can see on page 37, we have a much more enhanced description about that program. Page 39, this is the narrative of the numbers. So every time we had an issuance or a refunding, we're describing that here. We talk about, and if we had the visas, we talk about what the economic benefits are during the year. We also have a discussion about the different types of bonds, the index rate bonds, the variable rate bonds. We talk about the liquidity facilities that we have, and we list all of that in the tabular form.
But Bob, we're doing it because of the DASD pronouncement, or we're doing it because we just made the decision to be more expansive?
We took this opportunity, just looking at other governments, to say, let's be a little bit more descriptive. I have so many pages here discussing about pension and OPEB, which is very immaterial, and it's a requirement. So
You wanted some of your own stuff in here.
Right. So we have $30 billion of debt. This is, what we do. This is the main focus of what we do. And
Terrific.
we really thought this is much more to be more communicative to our stakeholders and
It's
let them
terrific.
know.
I think it's a great idea.
And I think what we, just looking at different other governments, we took the best of everything and tried to say, this is what we wanted to do to really describe what we do, at least for the authority. I mean, for the water board, we have a descriptive note here, which really is the fixed assets, that we have here. We wanted to, mirror our description. So it's not that we want to give more. I think this more is good, I think
So we do want to do it.
Yeah, we want to give less more pension and OPEB, but, this is our real focus. You can see the numbers here, what we have here, and you would say these are very large numbers, and we really want people to describe what your activities are, and your risk, and your risk. So, I think with that said, I really want to go, really want to respond to any questions that we have, any explanations, any clarifications, if anybody has any. So with that, Warren's going to go through his presentation. He has some required communications, and I'm going to turn it over to Warren. I also want to introduce Matthew, who's the manager of the UAP. Warren.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Good morning. So I'm going to go through the results of the audit. It was a very clean audit. We really have no findings in terms of journal entries, etc. But so it'll be a boring audit for you, but I'll try not to make it a boring presentation. But I do have some required communications that I have to go through. So just the first one on the team, we went through this in the pre-audit. We did have a new person on the technology side. Take a look at some of the controls, and that was incorporated into the audit plan this year. So some of the required communications are in tab number 2. So if you could turn to that and jump to page 2. We're substantially completed with the audit. There are a few open items here that'll be taken care of before we issue the report. Some of these, like the legal letter from the law department, we received that yesterday, so that's been taken care of. And we plan to issue the report on Tuesday, assuming that the joint audit committees accept the draft financial statements. Timing is laid out here. We're be issuing pretty consistently. We will have a management letter, not so much on the financial statement side, but on the technology side. There were some comments in the prior year that are being followed up on, and that a draft of that's been issued, and we expect to have that finalized in the next few weeks. Item 3, we always point out that financial statements are management's responsibility, and our responsibility to perform an audit according to the auditing standards. We do describe the change in or the implementation of GASB Statement 88. I think Bob did and his team did a good job of using that as an opportunity to just kind of take a fresh look at the disclosures that were in there. And I knew he was going to mention the pension and OPEB that 30 pages.
Goes on for pages and pages.
Right. So I think that does provide a little bit better balance of what disclosures focus on, and that effort was commendable. So item 5 on page 4 discusses the significant estimates that are inherited in the financial statements. One of the primary ones is the allowance for uncollectible receivables, and you can see the allowance this year was almost the same as last year. It's kind of done by it's formula driven based upon percentages that are applied to various buckets of receivables and aging categories. And there's also kind of a look back period to make sure that those percentages are reasonable over time. So that's the process. We provide some detail here, and we're comfortable that the allowance that's recorded is reasonable. Next estimate is really twofold. One is the estimated useful lives that are used to depreciate the utility plant and service. We're continuing to find those reasonable. The other part of this estimate is important as well. You have a lot of construction activities that go on, and when construction activities end and a project is placed in service, it has to be moved from work in process, so to speak, into utility plant and service where depreciation begins. So we take a look at those transfers to make sure that they're reasonable and make sure that they're complete. You also have an interest rate swap agreement, and that's an item C. It has a negative fair value of $107 million as of June 30th. We look at the fair value reports that are done by third parties and conclude that that's a reasonable estimate. Pollution remediation obligations, we've talked about this in the past. It's where there's an obligation has been incurred for to remediate pollution, an obligation to actually do it. You record an estimate of the liability. You can see that this year that estimate was $33 million versus $38 million last year, so we think that's a reasonable estimate. In a similar vein, the asset retirement obligations on the next page, that's where you have assets that you're currently in use. And this is a relatively new GASB statement. Assets that are currently in use where you're going to have to incur expenses to when those assets are taken out of service. You have to record basically a liability for that currently and recognize the cost of that. So it's that $18 million was the estimate for both last year and this year, and we reviewed those calculations and found them to be reasonable. Pension and OPEB are items F and G. That's really information. The reason why we saying before these are not significant is there's just a limited number of employees, and the slice of your unfunded liabilities relative to the other liabilities of the system majority are small, but those estimates are done by the actuary. It's one of the reasons why the financial statements are issued in October, to wait for those numbers, and believe that that information has been properly reflected in the financial statements. So continuing on to page 7, we have no adjusting entries that either management came up with after we received the trial balance or that we came up with as part of the audit. And there were no adjustments that were not recorded because they were deemed to be immaterial. No significant issues discussed, disagreements with management, or difficulties in performing the audit. Bob's very good with communicating during the year. in terms of any new issues that might be coming up, or new GASB standards are going to be implemented. There's good communication throughout the year, and that's all part of a healthy process. We didn't detect any fraud or illegal activities to call to your attention. We had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control to report. As I said, we will be issuing a management letter in the technology area, basically following up on last year and describing the process and any new comments that might come up from that. We're not aware of any consultation with other accountants. We confirm that we're independent. Future reports is really just a report on investment compliance, which we're going to take a look at, a draft of that in a couple minutes. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. Tab 3 is a one-page letter that states that there were no material weaknesses in internal control. That plus the technology comments will constitute the management letter. Draft financial statements, Bob already went through, those are in tab 4. Let's take a quick look at our opinion, which is the third page in. And this is an unmodified or clean opinion on the financials, again, subject to a handful of open items being taken care of that I mentioned at the outset. Tab 5 is a draft of that investment compliance report. It's kind of a negative assurance report where we say that nothing's come to our attention. We didn't detect any instances where you had investments that were outside of your investment guidelines during the year. So we report that as such. So this is a clean report as well. And then finally, we also perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. So the reporting for that is a little bit different. So if you can turn to what seems to be the third page in. The third page in is a slightly different report on the financial statements, and that it refers to government auditing standards in the scope paragraph. And then the last paragraph of that report refers to an additional report on internal controls and compliance and other matters at the financial statement level. So the reference to that report is to the report that's on the following page, which is a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. We had no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. There's nothing to report there. And there are no compliance or other matters that were material to the financial statements, so there's nothing to report there. So that report is a clean report as well.
So, before I turn it back over to the chair, I just wanted to mention that, these financial statements have received certificate of excellence every year from the GFOA. It's the efforts of two types of activities, from the authority and from the water board. And from the authority, it starts from every month, every day, the accounting that we do. We have dozens of bank accounts, and we need to reconcile those bank accounts. We have cash flows that we have to do. We have to pay the debt service, and we have to issue debt. And we work together with the finance department, and I just want to thank the finance department and the authority and my two accountants, Elena Sabunia and Namika Sharma. And Namika is really great on saying, we got to get this done. And I mean, she is fantastic on keeping us on track with the time. We do have, I think, over 70 pages on these financial statements. And, I really want to commend them for those efforts. It's a mature team. These are experienced accountants and so forth. And on the water board side, it's so important. The revenues come in, the CIS system, and Vivian's group, and I have to thank Holmar and Joe behind me, and on the water board side and the DEP relationship, and thank those groups and Vivian Clark's group to help us get this information together. We sit down and we have a preliminary meeting discussion and saying, how did everything go last year? What could we do better this year? And it's gotten very better. I mean, we're at October 11th is really great with having the pension information and everything in. And I think we've had these financial statements substantially done since October 4th and had an opportunity to look at them and to make sure we edit them well. And I'd like to thank everybody for that. So just wanted to go on record for that.
Thank you.
Hard work. May I ask a couple of questions? That are sort of, the 50,000-foot questions. Because of the open meetings rule, we can't take you aside and say, hey, Bob, and we also can't take Warren aside and say, hey, Warren. So, but since the results are so good, I thought maybe we'd just get on record, get it on the record. Are you comfortable that your staff size is appropriate? Are you working with the right number of people?
I actually am comfortable with the
Okay.
staff size. And if it wasn't for the excellent people that worked for me, I would say we need to get a couple extra people. And I think our experiences and our ability to streamline work, and I know this is we're talking about the water system, but I also have 5 other companies, and we're able to grab an economies of scale and
Sure.
learn and flatten learning curve to saying what's good and get the best out of all of them. And I just think that we're at that point here. But if people were to move along, then then we would think that we would need to. But
Okay.
we have documented through checklists of what needs to be done every day, what needs to be done every month, what needs to be done every year end. We have a request list that we have documented also that goes through audit, both on the water board side and the water finance side. So we've done a really good job in documentation. We're hoping that helps to bring folks that come beyond us to actually come in and to do this job.
So you don't have any worries about segregation of duties? You've got
No,
enough people to
because
split it?
Right, so we talk about 3 people here,
Okay.
but the payables is actually done by another person. We have a payables supervisor, which is another person. There's two separate signatures that's done on all of our transactions that
all
go
right.
out. And then we're, at least for the Water Authority, if I may, we have a trustee. They pay the
Of course,
bonds.
of course.
Any payments that need to do to an outside party, they also do verifications, not by the folks that sign it, but we have 6 or 7 offices that they do verifications for. So that risk is actually very minimal.
Well, let me say quickly that I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you so much.
I had to ask,
Thank you so much.
for the record.
And I always offer that if anybody wants explanations, I have folks from my other companies call me and say, hey, what does this mean, Bob? And we could talk about the financial statements. And Warren and Dan's numbers are here. Give them a call. Give them a call. And Warren could tell you, and Dan could tell you, I have 13 years of audit. I never wanted to speak to a manager when I did the audit. I wanted to speak to staff people. None of their folks, I say hello to them at the beginning, but none of their folks come to me. They go directly to the staff.
No
We
issues
feel
here.
that confident.
No issues here. But I've got to ask Warren now. Are you no disagreements with management that you've already told us? Are there any other issues that you might have that I should call you about?
No, I think everything I would have to report to you, I basically said. We find the books, I mean, the fact that there's no journal entries, no management letter comments, and kind of as a group, we're not really shy about writing management letter comments, so the fact that you have done is
I think that's terrific, by the way, that we don't have any comments this year. Well, that we not
There was some
financial
technology,
comments. Right.
Which have kind of almost always been a kind of.
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
always
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
But, it's very well prepared. Every year, Bob will tell us that he made some improvement in the information that in the manner of the way he was going to present information for us, and it's just a
Okay.
really good process. Nothing to report to.
Thank you, Warren.
I just want to say I second Alfonso's sentiments. You've all done an outstanding job.
Yeah, I think that's clear from all that we've just heard. We certainly like to go on record commending you, Bob, and your staff, and both everyone at the Water Board and the Authority in getting this together.
Certainly.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
I just had one quick question for Warren. Where do you think our focus generally should be in moving forward in terms of technology issues and cybersecurity in particular? Is that something, at what level of detail did you guys look at those issues?
Well, the procedures we do are to give us some comfort that the information, the reports, et cetera, that we're using come from an IT environment that is well controlled, and people don't have access to be able to change things and that kind of stuff. But we do take a look at the cybersecurity protections that are in place. We don't do a full-blown cybersecurity audit, penetration testing, that kind of thing. So, and that's done in conjunction with, it's really done to give us as the audit team comfort on the systems, as opposed to, extra IT controls. But I think, certainly this is a systems-driven entity on the water board or DEP side. So having systems that are up and running and capable and not, minimize risk of cybersecurity attacks is certainly something that's a focus.
Bob, is that something we could do independently of the city, or is that something the city would have to do with a full-blown review with penetration testing and all that kind of thing?
So I'm gonna defer that.
No, and it's a good
Because
point,
for the authority, I think that we have very minimum risk because our financial statements, everyone can take a look at them, we're okay with that. Other than the social security numbers of the 15 employees that are there, I think we're okay with all of ours to go public. So I don't think, but the CIS system is something that really needs to
And I think this came up, I think, last year, and we've been having discussions internally, myself with our business information officer, customer management, the deputy commissioner for IT, in terms of both, we are implementing the new CIS system. We just finished the design phase. We're now into coding and implementation. How we're going to get it up and running. We're still on track to thinking that we're going to have that operational by the end of 2020. So that's going to be a big shift for the billing and collection system in terms of ensuring we've got a robust system there. Other areas of cybersecurity, there's things I think that relate to on the revenue side, which is of a specific concern. I think that Warren just spoke to as well. But then there is the other whole area in terms of just for the system. In general, that goes across all the operations, which we work very, very closely with both cybersecurity, working out of the mayor's office, as well as with DoIT, the city's information technology office, with Homeland Security, with the FBI, with a whole suite of those entities that have an interest in making sure that the system itself is secure. So I think at one point, and whether it's either to the audit committee or at least to the water board, I think, Mr. Chair, we've talked about this, is having Cecil come and be able to speak to the board about, what those measures are and what things.
In fact, you recommended it.
Yeah, and I think there was that, and we haven't moved as expeditiously perhaps, but we have been talking about getting, what you talked to Jonathan, where we might be able to leverage the board's capabilities to get some of those resources where there may be some additional resources. And I think, working off of what, Warren's recommended in when we talked about the IT audit last year. So it's still in progress, but we'll be getting updates.
Let's talk some more about
Thank
that outside of this meeting, Joe,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we all, on the water board side, understand what it is we can do, what it is we have to sort of jointly do.
Exactly.
How we make it
wanna
work.
Be sure that we're, respecting the board's responsibility, but also acknowledging where there is a city oversight that we have to be working within that, framework as a city agency.
And that's why I asked that question about what we could do independently,
Yeah.
because I recognize that at least from an infrastructure perspective, we're part of a greater municipality on the one hand. On the other hand, that does pose any kind of threat to that infrastructure, and the operation of that infrastructure, in theory, would pose a threat to potentially the consumers or the folks who are buying bonds. And so that's why I just wanted to get a sense as to what is being done on that front. And on the water board side, in terms of the customers, I think having that presentation would be very helpful so that we have a sense as to how personally identifiable information is being secured. Thank you.
On either side, on the infrastructure side and on the customer side, it all has an economic risk, because if something happens in the infrastructure, we're not able to collect revenues to pay for it. So, we would also, would want to, interested to make sure that we listen into this conversation, because that is a financial risk.
We'd love to have you there, Bob.
Yeah, that's why I raised it here.
I know.
Yeah, so
I know.
it's here, because ultimately it's here,
Yeah.
right? It's ultimately here.
Thank you.
Any other questions anyone has?
No, sir.
I guess at that point then, I'd like to, there's a proposed resolution in your package that would recommend to the authority's board of directors and to the water board the acceptance of the auditor's report and the issuance of the financial statements as you have before you, subject to such non-material changes as we get to final press that the comptroller might approve. Do I hear a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objection to the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is approved. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item of business, pursuant to the charter of the Audit Committee, Section 3R in particular, the committee is required to annually review and approve our charter. No changes are proposed. A copy of the charter is in your package. I'd like to entertain a resolution to approve our Audit Committee charter with no changes.
Second.
Any discussions?
None here,
Any
sir.
objection?
None.
Hearing none, that is approved. The last item on the agenda is not a resolution item, but a review item. There's a schedule of dates that provides information on the items that are discussed at the annual meetings of the Audit Committee and what happens during the year. There are some changes that are proposed that update that schedule simply to reflect our current practices that are in place. If anyone has any questions or comments about that, I can entertain them now.
So the list, Max, is intended to tell us what will be, right now, what we think we'll be discussing
Yeah.
at the upcoming, I mean, but subject to change.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Any comment? Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.